Welcome back to the Suck Less Tomorrow podcast. I'm your host, Carlton Glassford. Joining me today is Rob Blumenthal, an administrator from Chesterton, Indiana. And if you're thinking, hey, that last name sounds familiar, you're not wrong. This is the brother of the person I interviewed, David Blumenthal, a few episodes ago. So a first ever here on the Suck Less Tomorrow podcast. I got brothers in the studio. Rob and I are going to talk about his time as a teacher, as an administrator, the highs, the lows, everything in between. You're going to love this one. All killer, no filler. Don't forget to smash that follow button and stay tuned.
Teaching is hard, the classroom's a grind. We try our best, take it one day at a time. We aren't perfect, but that's all right. We'll all suck less tomorrow.
Welcome back to the Suck Less Tomorrow podcast. I'm your host, Carlton Glassford. Joining me today is Rob Blumenthal, an assistant principal from Indiana. Rob, tell us about yourself, your history and education, and what are you up to?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Carlton. I was a high school social studies teacher for about 6 years. I was a dean of students for 3 years after that, the first of which I was an unlicensed administrator. So as I was finishing up grad school, I was the dean in the school that I was taught at. And then for the last 13 years, I have been an assistant principal at a different high school. Actually, the high school that I graduated from.
Yeah, and I graduated from.
You graduated from there too.
Yeah, well, I didn't graduate from that. Neither one of us graduated from that building, but
That building is now a parking lot.
it's because we're old. Yeah, when did they? Yeah, I was going to ask when they destroyed it, but that's not what people want to hear. Can we? Yeah, let's talk about. So 13 years. Wow, 13 years. That's awesome. But I do want to talk a little bit about you as a social studies teacher. You taught government. You taught AP government, right? Little U.S. history in there.
A little bit, and world history and civilizations.
Yeah, before we get into EA, because I want to talk about that because it's an awesome thing and listeners need to know. I do want to talk about you leaving the classroom because I'll say this. Maybe I'll embarrass you here a little bit, but not only were you an effective teacher, but you were also a beloved teacher. Your students really, I spent enough time with you and your students. I know they really loved you. And so that probably helped being a dean at that school, but also how did the decision to leave the classroom sort of come about? And was that a hard one for you? And then, now that it's been 15 years, what do you miss most about the classroom?
Man, yeah, definitely leaving the classroom was difficult. I initially, when I started teaching in Indiana, in order to earn more money, teachers had to get a master's degree, and then to get there was 4 lanes: a bachelor's degree, first year teacher. At some point after 10 or 15 years, if I had never gone back to school, I would have capped out at a certain pay rate. And then by getting some more, take more classes, graduate classes, there's another lane. And then grad school with the master's was the third lane. And then master's plus was a fourth. And so I initially that was my only goal was just to be able to provide a little better, financially for my family. And then I really fell in love with the coursework. I really enjoyed what we were learning about and what we, what being an administrator, an instructional leader, I'll say, was really about. I really became really passionate about that, being able to have a larger impact on the school as a whole and not just in my classroom. And then opportunity knocked. I really didn't intend to seek out, a role.
Yeah.
That wasn't my plan. And so that's why I only taught for 6 years and not longer.
Yeah.
I would have taught for a lot longer, but there's some things outside of my control and outside of the school's control even that led to this opportunity appearing, and I knew I couldn't pass it up.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. I hear that. Like that was sort of how I left the classroom the first time was when I left to be an instructional coach. There was just this window opened up that I didn't expect to be there. And I just also thought I'm the best person for this job. And so I, at my school. Now that I have you here, let the people know what Expedition America was, how it came to be. And then also like what I would love to hear for like a teacher who's listening would be the you can do this. Like it's going to be a lot of work, but you could do something like this, I guess. And then maybe talk about some of the hurdles. Because I remember you had an interesting hurdle about how to spend money on these trips that you had to work out because of, just the way schools and stuff do stuff. If you want to talk about some fond memories or things that came out of it, that'd be great too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like all good things in, like all good ideas in education, this expedition to America was stolen. It was a brainchild of Chesterton High School social studies teacher Bob Durant's, who in turn took the idea from science teacher also
Yeah.
at CHS, who who really I think is he's the
The
creator of yeah
yeah.
architect of the whole thing. So what Bob Durant did is he built a summer school class called Trailbound
Yeah.
that would um, you know take a little bit of time in the summer teaching some students about an aspect or two
Uh-huh.
of American history, and then go on a camping trip
Yeah.
to visit those same places that they had learned about. I never actually got the opportunity to go on that trip. It started after I had graduated. However, my two brothers-in-law both went
Hmm.
on multiple trail-bound trips, and I saw the uh, the real impact that those experiences had on them. Even then, I had no idea the profound effect it would have on my life.
Hmm.
Not just as an educator, but as a person.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I was in I think my third year teaching, and I reached out to Mr. Durant's. I was in Highland High School in the region, Northwest Indiana at the time, and he was gracious enough to provide me with everything.
Mm.
This is, everything that he did. He's like, here you go, good luck, and just available for questions, and how did and then I talked with him, back and forth a couple of times,
Hmm.
um, you know, um, before we went, and then I began a probably a 2-year process, I think, of getting everything off the ground. I had to work with the teachers association, because in Highland where I was, like, there was a big, having the backing of the teachers association, the union was really, like, it was culturally, that was something that was really important. And then I had to meet with and talk to the building administration, and then central office. Ultimately, I had to meet with the CFO,
Hmm.
finance director, and the superintendent, the high school principal, and the high school treasurer. There was a lot of and red tape and bureaucracy,
Yeah.
rightfully so. What I was proposing is unique and an enormous amount of work, and they were right to tell me no, as it was,
Initially, at least.
yeah, for sure, yeah,
Yeah.
initially, just because it was pretty out of the box, and I understand as an administrator now looking back, absolutely,
Yeah. And for a little more context for those who are listening, is yeah, we basically just took 14 kids for 10, was it 10 days or 2 weeks?
yeah, 16, yes, two
Six-
groups of 8, 16 kids,
Oh, 16 kids. That's
on
what it was. Yeah.
yep, yeah, on a 10-day camping
10-day
and
camping trip and
backpacking trip.
hiking and overnight hiking. And it's like,
Yep.
you got to make sure kids, because it's like, what happens if halfway up the mountain the student can't make it, or someone
Yeah,
goes the wrong direction and then you have to. That
all
was
those
me
things.
I went the wrong direction, and Rob had to come catch us and kind of ruined the trip. Sorry about that. That'd have been really frustrating for you at the time, but
It's all good.
anyway. But no,
It's a
you know
good
what's
story.
amazing is, like, so I was able to go on 3 trips, 3 of the 5?
Yeah,
3 of the 5 trips with Rob here, and some of those I was gonna say kids, but they're all in their 30s now. But, like,
I
they
know.
still reach out and say hi on Facebook or send me happy birthdays, and, like, you just sort of, like, get such a great relationship with them. So, yes, recommend that.
Yeah,
Okay, transitioning now, let's get into the admin stuff. I
sure.
saw a video. I'm just gonna hit you with something hard, and you're gonna, and because I just saw this TikTok from, and I don't know if you listened, but a few weeks ago, and you should check her out. Barb Flowers. She runs a podcast called The Principal's Handbook, and it's just for administrators. And she has
Okay.
her EDD, and she's an administrator, and she was on my show, and I was watching one
Nice.
of her videos, and she said, like, if a teacher says, like, there's no discipline in the school, the goal should not be to, like, police that comment. The goal should be to address why the comment was made, sort of thing. And I'm wondering, like, if you feel, I mean, I know when I was at Chesterton, like, I felt like discipline was pretty strict. Like, kids were pretty well behaved, but it's hard to get away with things. But yeah, like if you hear a teacher saying, or why do you think teachers say that sometimes? And you don't have to speak obviously for your own, for your school, but I know you have administrators all over the country you've met. But like, yeah, like why do you think teachers say that, and what's actually going on behind the scenes? So if you're a first year teacher being like, I keep kicking this kid out and nothing's happening, and I know there's a couple different reasons, but like, what is happening?
Yeah, I mean,
If you don't mind.
I agree with what the principal said, is that um you really like the conversation is really about the bigger picture. I think in general, philosophically, as an administrator, we have a 30,000-foot view.
Yeah.
We see things from a different perspective
Mhm.
than teachers in the classroom. That's not like a knock on teachers. It's just the nature of my role. Ultimately, I look at student discipline and the purpose of it as, to be disciplined,
Mhm.
where in part, where there are some things, behaviors that are pretty automatic. I don't want to say zero tolerance,
Yeah.
but I mean, are significant consequences when students do like very serious things. And then on the other hand, there are a lot of behaviors that kind of could go a couple of different directions than all the other factors. I think at the high school level, ultimately, we're in the graduating from high school business,
Mhm.
you know, and you have someone a student, 14, 15, 16 years old, and like teenagers make bad choices.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what they do.
Yeah.
And, it's hard sometimes to take those things not to take those things personally. And yeah, their behavior often it can be totally unacceptable. But it would be easier just to throw them out,
Yeah.
like just eject them, sure,
Yeah.
suspend them, expel them, whatever. But then they come back.
Yeah.
They come back, and then what?
Yeah.
So they missed out on, a semester or two. So again, at the high school level, out of 8 semesters, so you kick them out for a year, that's 1/4 of their high school career that's gone,
Mhm.
and they can't get it back. And so, like, you're cutting off your nose to save your face a little bit.
Yeah.
But again, like, you try to find the balance between holding the student responsible
Mhm.
and supporting your colleague, but still having that long game in mind
Yeah.
when you are meeting with a kid for the 10th time in a
Mhm.
9 weeks, or more. So yeah, it's the as an administrator, I want to have that dialogue. If a teacher has a question or is frustrated, I want to know so that we
Mhm.
can talk about it. Because otherwise, they're just going to be in that echo chamber and in their own head and wonder why they're not being supported, or wonder why this kid is allowed to run the show.
Yeah.
And at least have the dialogue and talk about it and say, hey, these are all the things that are going on. There's a
Yeah,
lot.
sure.
It's complicated.
Do you feel like some of it is from not for some administrators, maybe there's like not enough communication back because you guys are so busy. You're dealing with one student and then something else pops up, and then you got make sure you got the fire drill coming up, and a parent calling, that like you're just not able to, maybe not you, but like some administrators just aren't shooting emails back enough saying, "Hey, I did meet with Johnny. This is what happened." You don't know. Like, because as a teacher, you're like, "Oh, nothing happens," but like maybe that kid served 4 lunch detentions or a Saturday school, but like just no one told you. You think there's some communication there, or not really? That's not really what you think it
Oh,
is.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that communication is incredibly important as an administrator, as a teacher. I think that I encourage teachers all the time to call parents and to talk to them on the phone. In my experience at the high school level, teachers are far more adverse to that than
Mhm.
elementary teachers.
Yeah.
Elementary teachers are great at picking up the phone and calling parents, and in high school teachers, they want to send an email.
Yeah.
And that's not the same thing.
I
But
call parents in class sometimes. In the middle of class, I'll be like, "I'm calling your kid," like, calling it.
yeah,
Yeah.
good for you.
And I'm like, "I'm not gonna call the office. We're gonna call your dad," you know?
Yeah.
Like, anyway, yeah.
That is so much more powerful, picking up the phone,
Mhm.
than sending an email. And so, yeah, but yeah, communication all around is super important.
I think a lot of new teachers, and I know when I was a teacher, like we worry about how we're perceived by administrators of like if the room's a little chaotic, if we're writing kids up a lot because we're struggling with that classroom management. My suspicion is you all who have been in that seat are giving more grace to the new teacher than the new teacher is giving to themselves because you understand the learning curve. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, that's why, any teacher evaluation model that has self-reflection, the self-reflection is always significantly lower. It should be, I guess, and not always, like significantly lower than what their evaluating administrator sees. The difference between someone that is doing well as a first, second year teacher, and this is true for kids too, kids and teachers, the difference is communication.
Mhm.
Where if a student is struggling and the kid says, Mr. Glassford, I am struggling. Now you know why they're not doing their homework.
Yeah.
It's because they don't understand. And
Yep.
like versus just a bunch of zeros and the kid never says anything.
Yeah.
If the first time I'm hearing that, a teacher is struggling is when I go in for an observation and I see, pandemonium, I'm going to have some questions.
Yeah.
But what I think teachers don't understand is that they're like, I hired that person,
Yeah.
right? I said to my superintendent, I think this kid's got it. I want them to teach. I wanted them to teach the children in my, in the community where I work. I'm
Yeah.
hanging my hat on them a little bit. If I don't support them, at least initially, like for something that's like fixable,
Yeah.
I want to work with that. If I don't do that, then that's on me.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I want the teacher says, and veteran teachers, like, I'm really struggling. How can I help you? Because like ultimately we're on the same
Yes.
team. Like I don't like, yeah, I need them to do their best, and my job is to remove barriers to that. Sometimes they're the barrier, and sometimes the reminder, or certain strategies, or hey, let's
Yeah.
try this, and then have those conversations. But yeah, like that stuff goes all downhill. If I like have like recommended a teacher, like right out of college, to teach English, and they don't make it, like some of that's on me for not doing
Yeah.
I'm supposed to do to help them grow.
No, I think about that, how if you've well, we've talked about how much I biffed my first year teaching and just how bad it went. And then I think about like how that must have looked for the assistant principal who like was the one who brought me in for the job interview. But I guess what I'm hearing is that yeah, communicate, right? If you're struggling, talk to your assistant. Like they're not. It's not a gotcha. It's not an us
No,
versus them. Like we're all on the same page. We're all there for kids. Is what I'm hearing.
the like there isn't a gotcha. You'll know if
Yeah.
there is an issue.
Yeah.
You'll know.
Like
There's
no.
no hiding it. There's no subtlety. Like it's like
You're not gonna
you'll know.
just find out in April out of nowhere, like, "Hey, your year's over, bud." Like, see, you're
Nope.
finding yeah, like, you'll know well before then that there's a problem.
You
Yeah,
will know.
and,
Like,
you know
why am I meeting with all of these people about my performance? Like
yeah,
this is like, I'm getting emails about like this conversation that we had. Like, where do I sign? Like, like there's no
yeah,
surprises.
yeah. No, it's true because like, a lot of us in Oregon here, they have the probationary teaching just like in Indiana, but, it's a 3-year, so 3-year probationary, and they can sort of, like, do the release you, without well, there's still they still have to list cause, which is nice in Oregon, but they still don't have to, like, guarantee you a job, basically. And, so a lot of us who are new to the district were a little stressed, and a guy I work with is like, "Man, it is way more work to replace you if you're doing fine than it is, because he's like, let's say they don't love something about you. Like, well, they can't guarantee the next guy is going to be any better. And so it's just like, they want to support you. They want to keep you there. It's kind of the
Yeah,
gist of
absolutely.
it. All right, let's talk about legislation. What are your opinions there?
I think that, in the past, 20, 21 years as an educator, accountability has only gone up.
Yeah.
We go from, standards and now high stakes testing in, English and math. And now there's an emphasis in post-secondary readiness.
Mhm.
And so it's not just graduating, but making sure that you're, ready for what students want to do after graduation as well. It is, I think from the public standpoint, it makes sense because they, the goal they see as, secondary education is to create a workforce and a well-educated, competent workforce.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I think that has that movement, this movement teaching more complicated and more challenging than it used to be, again, 21 years ago. I don't think
Sure.
teaching's ever been easy, but it's just different now, and there's more emphasis on things that weren't an issue,
Yeah.
5, 10 years ago. And I think that to be honest, I think the divide between high performing school corporations and lower ones, or big versus small, that divide is gonna continue to grow. At least in Indiana, with the accountability
Yeah.
metrics and models that we are required
Yeah.
to participate in.
For sure. Let's talk, because I think a lot of teachers are feeling this one, the pre and the post COVID. I think a lot of the talks are like, since COVID, there's sort of been like, like no putting the toothpaste back in the tube for some things. And I think the biggest one is definitely, I don't know how you feel, but I think is attendance, because that's a
Mm,
nationwide issue. That's not, where I'm at. That's not where you're at. Like
for sure.
nationwide attendance, chronic absenteeism. So maybe you could talk a little bit about how your job and your struggles or focus changed, from 2018, 2019 when you're an assistant principal versus 2021, 2022. Just yeah, and things that like wins that you've gotten. Like here are some things I've done or we've done that have really made some positive impacts on students' lives and stuff too. But in response to those situations.
Yeah, I agree. I think attendance has been, is, the biggest change, post-COVID, is that, we were telling families, "Don't come to school."
Mm.
And then now we're like, "Please come to school. You have to come to school now."
Yeah.
And that's still, even, these years later, that's still a thing. That's still challenging. I know that, again, Indiana, it definitely, where I'm at, is very concerned about absenteeism and attendance, and really pressuring schools and families to really emphasize the importance of attendance. And they're not wrong. I mean, if as the biggest indicator of whether or not you're gonna be successful at whatever is showing up. And in education, if you miss that critical, lesson, or that information that you need, like, it's difficult to get it back. It's not easy. And I think that those two go hand in hand. I think that, post COVID, I would say that because for kids now, especially at the high school level, they missed out on some really formative years, in their education, and how you quote do school, that there is not as much, I'd say, resilience,
Mhm.
academic resilience, as there used to be. And I think that the concrete thinking that students end up over time relying less and less on, they're able to they think more and more abstractly as they age. I think that is unfortunately getting pushed back, where students are still primarily concrete thinkers, very black and white on things, and need things to be explicit for longer than they used to be. And again, like, that's just a new challenge. It's not something that is insurmountable.
Yeah.
I think, again, educate also demonstrated, without a doubt, how flexible educators are, and how we can make anything work with a weekend's notice.
Yeah.
And it just requires a shift to, helping prepare students for what we're doing now, and then adapt to the next thing.
I remember like everyone comes back from COVID, and then that January or February when Omicron came out. I don't know how you guys handled it, but our attendance dropped like 30% for like about a week and a half. And it was just,
Mm.
we're all looking around like, are we teaching? Are we not teaching?
I don't remember. I think by that time, I think we just sort of barreled through.
Yeah, that's what we ended up. I mean, we only canceled school for like a day and been like, we're doing e-learning, but it was tough. You mentioned resilience, and I want to talk about that. Like, how do you think we should balance, and by we, I mean, educators, grit, but also being responsible to like students' really real mental health needs, right? Like we need them. We want them to have, I think most educators would be like, students need grit. I think there's books about it, literally called grit.
Hmm.
But then how, like, but yet mental health challenges are real. But
Yeah.
as I don't know if you've read the book The Coddling of the American Mind, but that's a book. It's I don't know if I would fully recommend it, but it talks about sort of like exposure therapy and like the more you avoid things that it can make it that it's just even that much more difficult, right? So yeah, grit versus, just being responsive to students' needs. How
Yeah, that's
is
difficult.
there
I think that absolutely. I think that grit is definitely a value that we the educators in general want to impart on their students. I think just like math skills, it has to be scaffolded. Where it's over time. Where for it's similar to peanut allergies, right?
right?
Like conventional wisdom used to say, "Hey, do not give your young kids peanut butter."
Yeah.
Don't do it because then if you do it too early, you're going to trigger this allergy. Turns out the opposite is that you
Yeah,
got to give it to
exactly.
them as
Yeah.
early as you can. And so, yeah, I think there has to be like a lot of things. Like if you do it on purpose, then you're more likely to be able to build that. And again, it's not perfect, it's not foolproof, but overall, there has to be some collective will in a school system, top down, in
Mhm.
order to say like, hey, this is something that we want to incorporate into what we're doing is those that develop that abstract thinking and the grit that I think for a lot of students is mostly extrinsic, right? Where a student, they develop that sort of on their own.
Yeah.
But like almost like a lot of things, it can definitely be taught or fostered.
Yeah, for sure. Second, no, last penultimate question. I think the same way students don't always view teachers as people and they think that we have all the answers and that they expect us to just be a certain way. Do you think sometimes that ends up the relationship between administrators and teachers? And if so, what would you want teachers to just like sort of take a breath and consider when thinking about what's going on in a school?
Sure. I mean, I say this to my colleagues all the time is that my positional authority is just on all the time. It just exists. And oftentimes it's in the way. I wish it were like on a dial where most of the time I keep it like really like pretty low. And just so like, and then I would, turn it up when I really needed to and then back down and then back down again. Yeah, it
Yeah.
gets in the way all the time. So, um, whenever there are two administrators walking together or three, good Lord,
Uh-huh.
together, teacher and student reactions are always the same. So to the point where, how there's a pride of lions
Yeah.
or, a murder of crows, it's an
Yeah.
uh-oh of administrators. And then if it's, if too many, it's like, oh dear God, of administrators. It's
Yeah.
so it's just like this is like me and Sam, our coworkers, we're friends. Like we
Yeah.
are just going the same direction, having an innocent conversation. Do relax. Like it's
Yeah.
not that
Yeah.
serious. Yeah, absolutely. Like there definitely, as an assistant principal, I'm a professional villain. And so, I get that. I deliver bad news all the time, but and that gets challenging, of course. But yeah, again, there's also no secrets. There's no surprises. You'll know
Yeah.
if it is if your doorstep is getting darkened for a reason, or
Yeah.
if it's just your own like perception of
Yeah.
what's going to happen.
Yeah. I lied. I got two more. I got another question that came up while you were
Sure.
thinking about that. So we talked about favorite moments as a teacher, but as an administrator, because you were kind of talking about that, the way you were talking, it made me just think about this. What is something of a great memory you have now or experience you had as an administrator that you wouldn't be able to have as a teacher that you're like, this was amazing, and I would not
Oh,
have
sure.
gotten this relationship or this thing if I was still in the classroom.
I think that the big difference for me between being in the classroom and teaching and as an administrator is the highs are high and the lows are low. The and that's true in the classroom. It's just even greater,
Mhm.
right? And so the lows are very very low and the highs are very very high, and they often come with greater space in between them. It's
Mhm.
a long game. But for me, the times every time that I've had the opportunity to really work with a student to help and their family to help them to graduate, I know that in some cases there are young people out there that would not have had their high school diploma at all without them being a student where I work. It's definitely a team effort. I don't do it by myself, but I when one of my responsibilities is to really work to get everybody I can to graduate. And so when I have the fortune of having a real direct hand on that, those are the best.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. So usually how I sort of wrap things up, but before I get there, is there anything that you feel like with this audience, new teachers are listening, that you'd want them to know, that you'd want to say to them?
Yeah, I think the thing that new teachers need to really remember is that like the content and the pedagogy and the strategies and all of the science and all of the research is awesome. And please, that's great. But you got to like kids at the end of the day. First, can't teach that. If you don't like kids and don't like being with them and educating them, then you are in the wrong. Then don't do it. The other stuff will come. Everyone's first year teaching is different levels of bad, and so it's not good.
I might
So
say they suck, actually.
yeah, you could. Yeah, you definitely could, and that's okay. But
Yeah.
I think ultimately the first thing and the most important thing is I really like being with kids.
Yeah.
So try to remember that.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great advice because I think that that's so much. I was thinking about this dichotomy. I don't know if it's dichotomy, but like, and I was trying to phrase it in a way that doesn't make it sound like I'm endorsing being ineffective. But it's like, if you are ineffective, you're struggling with your pedagogy, your classroom management stuff, like you can still be, I was trying not to use the word, but like a good teacher in like, did you show up for a kid today? Were you their safe person today? Did you make them feel seen today? Then that's also part of being a teacher,
For
and
sure.
you can learn the other stuff,
Yeah.
but you can learn how to wait time. But
Yeah.
like, yeah, but like being someone a student can go to when they have a problem, or just greeting them at the door, and maybe you're the first person that said something nice to them that day, you know?
Right.
And
Yeah.
like,
If you can hang your hat on wait time, but you don't like kids, right?
who cares? What are you doing?
Who cares? Yeah. Yeah. Who
Yeah.
cares?
What are you doing? So you sort of answered the last question that I usually ask, which is, what would you tell that teacher? That was fantastic, by the way. Love that answer. So last bit, you're a teacher's listening, thinking, do I want to be an administrator? You've already answered a lot about this, but what questions would they need to ask themselves if they're ready? And this is the final question, Rob. They're ready
Sure.
to leave the classroom. How would they know if they're ready to leave the classroom? What would you advise them for the administrator to be?
Yeah, absolutely. It is a lifestyle. Don't do it because you want to make more money. Don't do it. It's not worth it. My hourly rate is abysmal. It's not. Don't do it. Do it because you are passionate about the kinds of things that as an administrator you get to do. I work with kids in a completely different way than classroom teachers do. I get to support teachers every day with, talking with students, developing relationships, working with, adults and really coming up with ways to improve the school again at a larger scale. That's really what I would say is that, don't chase a title. Don't be in a rush to like, pad a resume, really see yourself, doing the kinds of things that you're passionate about, and all the other stuff will happen when it's supposed to. Definitely would recommend spending some time with an administrator if you can, like take a personal day and shadow them for a day,
Hmm.
and see what it's like. I've been an administrator for 13 years and I've never had 2 days that have ever been the same. Never. It's what I love about the job. I definitely think that you want to go into it for a similar reason that you went into teaching, is that you're passionate about the things that are really essential to
Hmm.
teaching. You like kids and you want to make a difference.
Not if summer's off, because you don't get those anymore, right?
I don't know.
So if that's
No,
why you
it's
became a teacher, you're not getting those are gone.
Yep.
Those are gone.
Yeah, and then some, and I know there are plenty of administrators that do still get summers off, but not what I'm doing, and not where I work.
All
I'm
right.
too busy.
Rob, I can't thank you enough for taking time to join me today. I really
Oh,
appreciate
my
it.
pleasure. I had fun.
All right. The book is Suck Less in the Classroom Tomorrow. It's out right now from Routledge Ion Education. If you use my promo code 26EAS2, you can get 20% off there, or you can buy it off Amazon or Barnes and Noble. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, rate. All the things help me out. Again, thank you so much, Rob, for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure, Carlton. It was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
Don't